Hello there. Uh, my name is Lois Richter, and the program is Birding with Lois. And tonight, he's here with me. Wait a minute. Is it? Well, he's in one of those.
Is it this Zoom makes you dyslexic?
I-
It's hard.
It's really tough. Anyway, I think if I look that way, I'm no. If I look, which way was right? Is that looking at you?
Yep. That's on my screen. You appear to be looking at me now.
Okay.
That
The
would be me.
confusion, of course, is that I have mine mirrored so that I don't confuse myself. You're pointed away from me now.
Really? On my screen,
Yeah,
you're
because
over
you're
there.
reversed too. You've got your mirror on.
Ah,
It's over there.
what can we do?
We can say, welcome to our guests. Hello, hello. I'm so glad you could join us today. This is Birding with Lois, and my guest today is Jack. Well, actually, it's John Muir Laws, but as he says, Jack. I go by Jack because it's so much shorter than John.
That's right.
What? I'm gonna have to explain it. All right.
It's going to be one of those evenings.
It is going to be one of those evenings. So, Jack, tell me who you are, why I called you. Just introduce yourself.
Well, hey everybody. Really happy to be on the show here with Lois. I am a naturalist and birder. And my primary tool of investigating the world is to keep a little notebook, is to keep a journal with me. So I'm a very avid journaler as I go about observing birds. And I've ended up teaching lots of classes on everything from, how do you write down the song of a bird that you're hearing? How do you draw the bird that you're seeing? You're essentially using a journal as a tool to make our birding even more immersive and our memories better.
And it's called nature journaling, right?
That's right. That's right. You could call it whatever you like. Essentially, it's just it's a trick of getting a notebook in your hand and using that really dynamically when you're
Mhm.
out exploring. And you can do that with your birding. You could also do that looking at mushrooms or lichen or rainbows or anything else that makes you happy.
So the way that I met John Muir Laws, by the way, if you get a chance, check out his books. He does wonderful ID books, and that's how I first heard of him. And then someone from our local Audubon Society here in Davis invited him to come and speak to us. And so back in 2007, he came to Davis, and I happened to be lucky enough to get to the after meeting. We went out for dinner at a restaurant, and I happened to be sitting next to him, and we got to talking about artist trading cards, which are these little things, and I had so much fun with it. And I was enthused about it, and he said, "That's wonderful." And I happened to have a blank with me, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll do one." And he took it and he drew, and I came away with a Lewis's Woodpecker artist training card by John Muir Laws. And so when this birding show has been going, I've been thinking about who I could get to come and talk about things. And I noticed that every time I walk through the house, it's right over there. And I went, I'll just call him. And I tracked him down and I sent an email and he replied and said yes. So, and that's how we met, is through art. I
That's
guess
right.
that would be a journaling page of one, right?
That's right. That would work.
Okay, so I know that you've done that for a long time, and you do a lot of presentations and speaking and all sorts of things. What are you doing right now? I mean, this week. What did you do this morning?
So this week, well, this morning, I got to play the ukulele with my daughters.
Right.
That was
Right.
fun.
Great.
So my primary job is being a daddy, and I'm trying to be. I'm aware of the fact that this sort of wonderful, magical time when they're like small and just and all these doors are opening up in their brains. At some point we're not going to be there, and so I'm trying to be as present as I can during that time. So my
Mhm.
major job is being a daddy. I played ukulele this morning.
Cool.
and then taught a class on um, drawing mammal heads.
It
So a
was a
class.
good class too. I've
Oh,
been attending these last few ones. It's really good. This is, by the way, a workshop that he does, and you can sign up for it on his website, which is
johnmuirlaws.com. And you don't even have to sign up. You just go to my calendar and you kind of go like join meeting, and whoop, you're in the Zoom meeting. Pow, just like
yeah.
that. And so there's no registration, there's no fee. Every week, I've got a new free workshop
Hmm.
on some aspect of nature journaling. A lot of those right now, a bunch of ones coming up, are kind of relating to the idea of relating to drawing.
Hmm.
But we do them on all sorts of different subjects, from recording what you hear to um, how can you use math in your journal? How can you get better at, there's a bunch of birds out on the field, and
How
how many
many
are
are
there?
there?
Yeah, how many are there? And we all got this subjective feeling like, I can estimate those. But
Yeah.
when you get 20 people, I actually had this wonderful experience. Um, I was out on a Christmas bird count,
Hmm.
and I had been invited to join kind of one of these A-team birders and
Yeah.
groups. And because I'd written a field guide, people were like, "You must be like a really hotshot birder."
Really
I'm not. I need the field guide, right? That's right.
great.
Yeah, when you're writing a field guide, you've got reference material in front of you. But I we were rolling up to these fields, and they're filled with snow geese and Canada geese
Hmm.
and all these white fronts. And so people in the group were like, okay, I'll do the white fronted geese. And there are 1,700, and they'd write 1,700 down on a piece of paper, and we'd go on to the next place. And I'm thinking like, wow, these people are really, really, really good at this. and and so
But they're
then,
guessing.
well,
Jeff,
that's what I
they're
was
guessing.
wondering about. And so I said, like, on this next one, let's all count the white-fronted geese, and nobody tell what you're doing, what your number is. I'll go around and collect everybody's numbers, and then we'll compare. And so they said, no, no, like we would rather not know. And so I kept pushing it, and um, finally the uh, at one point, this flock of snow geese flew over our head. I said, all right, I insist, everybody, I need an estimate of how many birds are in that flock. And so
Mhm.
people counted them. I got everybody's numbers, and um, they were all over the map
Mhm.
until one of the people who had real kind of esteem in the group said his number in a loud, bold voice. And from that point on, everybody who gave me their secret number after that, their numbers were really close to that one. It's the anchoring heuristic. And
Mhm.
so, we kind of have the subjective feeling like, like, yeah, that's a good number for that field. But if we don't have a way of checking,
Yeah.
the more we do it, the more confidence we have in our ability to estimate these things, but our accuracy may not actually be going up.
Yeah. When we, our Yola Audubon Society, which is the Audubon Club here, when we are preparing for the Christmas bird count, there is a slideshow, and they put up on the screen flocks flying and say, okay, everybody,
That's great.
how many you think are there? And then they'll tell us the real number because they've had the slide, they've counted them. They know that it's not just 1,500, it's
Yeah,
1,572. And so we can get better in our estimation by trying it and then
that's right.
seeing how we fall down. Now, were we overcounting? Were we undercounting? What did we do wrong? Was it that we blocked out 100 here and then ended that was okay, so that's 1,500? Or was it that our 100 was wrong, or they moved too fast? And then when they're sitting down, you have the ones in front, you have the ones in back, and it's like, oh, that's even harder because when they're in the sky, at least they're all spread out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also when you're right, when there's some in front, some in back, then those ones in front, if you take an area this big, it will have fewer birds in it
That's
than
right.
an area that same size in the back because of perspective.
Exactly. You need
And
to
yeah,
do
that gets,
strips. You need to do strips
that's right.
from
So
the butt to the back, that wide, and that was that many. So then how many segments? And if they are uniformly distributed, you can get pretty close.
yeah, and but you're absolutely right. This is something that we can get better at with practice.
Hmm.
And Department of Fish and Game has a wonderful website, a section of their website where they have stuff for training you to do exactly this.
Hmm.
David Allen Sibley also on his website has some, these little collections of dots that people can count. I
Hmm.
once spent some time with some people who were actively doing bird counts, and in the in the evening they would sit around. They had this little piece of carpet and a jar of beans, and they would spill a bunch of beans out, and somebody had pre-counted those, and they knew how many there were. And then what you do is you have everybody give you their quick first estimate of how many are
Hmm.
there, and then you, as you were saying, group count them. Like that's 100, that's 200, 300, 400, 500. Then you group count those and you get a more accurate thing. And then you get to know the actual number.
Hmm.
And if you practice things again and again
You get
without
better.
feedback, then you get more confident but not more accurate. But if
Right.
you have a feedback loop, then you can get more confident and accurate. That's
That's
pretty
right.
cool. And these people were good.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some incredible counters out there. Always good to have one of those on every team that goes out at the
That's right.
Christmas bird
That's
count.
right.
So have you gone to any other Christmas bird counts?
Oh yeah, they're so much fun.
Yeah.
Also, just socially, it's great to kind of bounce around with people, and then you're contributing to citizen science
Hmm.
on top of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's interesting to look at the Christmas bird count data over time, and we can get these sort of an idea of general trends.
Yeah.
And then with something like eBird, you're able to get practically up to the minute snapshot of sort of relative numbers of birds across the entire country or the world.
That's right.
It's amazing what
Yeah.
citizen science is giving us.
And we have talked about eBird and some of that on some of the previous shows. So we've had some really good discussions about that. One of the things that I noticed that you've been doing, and when, by the way, Jack and I got together and we did a preview. We did a little pre-thing to see what we wanted to talk about. And we came with observation. So Jack, Jack's going to talk about how to improve your birding by observing better. And I am intrigued by this subject. Did you want to start that now, or do you want to chat some more?
Well, yeah, we could start that right now. Um, and
How are we
if
going to go
you
about it?
so if you talk to most people,
Hmm.
um, would you and you'd ask them, would you say that you are um, average, better than average, or worse than average as an observer?
And
Um,
they will answer based on their personality, not on their expertise.
yeah, well, but we all think like, well, observing things, you mean just looking at stuff? I've been looking at stuff my entire life, and I, I've never met anybody who has said below average.
Hmm.
Um, a few people say average. Most people consider themselves better than average
Hmm.
at observing, and that's interesting. It's sort of one of these Lake Wobegon sorts of things. But
Hmm.
observation is a skill,
Okay.
and you can get
Like
better,
counting birds.
like counting birds. Exactly. And the more that you practice it, the better and better you get. And but what you're fighting against, I'm going to bring up my favorite visual aid,
Ooh, the brain.
the brain. You've got this wad of electric meat between your ears, and it is it is actually barely getting by with the tasks which we need to do to kind of run through the forest and not get eaten along the way. And when we ask it to do more sort of complex tasks, it starts having a lot of trouble. And so it's extremely expensive. So this is about 2% of your body weight,
Hmm.
and it uses, check this out, about 20% of all the calories you consume.
Oh yeah,
So
it's working. I mean,
yeah, that's
it,
1 out of every 5 burritos goes to
mhm.
feeding this thing. Right? So, um,
Oh, and it
so,
opens.
oh yeah,
You have such cool toys
oh
there.
yeah, yeah, we're a split brain over here. Um, so the kind of the consequence of this is that if our brains have a way of working a little bit less hard, they
Hmm.
will take that. And there's real survival value to that.
Hmm.
So your brain kind of looks around and it assesses, right, I'm not threatened here, I'm safe.
Hmm.
Right? A new phenomenon pops up, your brain kind of goes like, is it going to eat me? Then
No,
can I
no,
eat
no, no.
it?
Ooh,
Ooh, no, no. Okay. Then your brain can go like, all right, we can relax. And if you say to give somebody directions to, well, let's actually try this. I'm
okay,
gonna just change my camera view over here for a second, and I have a little
okay,
phenomenon here,
all right.
and I'm gonna put it on the screen. And um, here we go.
You're gonna put me on the hot seat, aren't you?
Well, no, I'm actually not. I'm gonna put everybody who's watching on the hot seat.
Uh-oh.
And what I want you to do is I want you to look really hard at this. I want you to look really carefully. And now look harder.
I find that my brain is wanting to try and identify it rather than observe it.
Very, very good observation. So, Lois, you're actually spot on because if you can identify it,
Then I can
um,
dismiss it.
exactly, exactly. So your brain then says it is now safe for me to kind of go on to the next thing. I know what it is, and I know it's not going to eat me. It's not going to be, and then I'm ready and on to the next thing. And so I think that telling somebody to look hard at something is one of the least useful directions that you can give somebody. Like, what does it really mean to look hard at something? Because, hold on a second. I'm going to bounce my camera back to me for a second. Here we go. Like, if you're looking hard at something, like you're supposed to, right? And like you stare at it really intensely, and yeah, exactly. So like, and your brain's going like, yeah, I'm looking, yeah, I'm looking, yeah, I'm looking. I'm got my attention, my gaze directed at this, but your brain basically really quickly figures out what's there, and your
Mhm.
brain's going like, you know what, we don't have to work so hard, and
Mm.
if we kind of we've got it basically identified. I kind of know roughly what this is,
Mhm.
and so I'm
And I
okay to
can't eat it, and it won't eat me, so okay.
exactly. So we're safe. We're safe. We're safe to kind of go on to the next thing. And so you end up just kind of staring at something. And what your brain does to save calories is as you're looking at it, is it firstly it's kind of taking in the doing this threat assessment and resource
Mhm.
assessment, and then your brain will notice a couple of things about it, kind of go like, oh, cool. And
Mhm.
then your
Oh, and they
brain
got
will
some little ones on the
notice,
side there. Oh, now I know
yeah,
what it is. Yeah.
yeah. And then your brain will go and say, um, like oh, I'm supposed to keep looking, and then what you do is you end up noticing those things that you've already noticed all
Mhm.
over again. And they've done these experiments where they put people in front of paintings and they have them look at this really carefully, and the helmet that they're wearing tracks their eye movements, and they find that very quickly people kind of get into this little loop where they notice that, this, and the other thing, then that, this, and the other thing, then that, this, and the other thing, but they
Mhm.
have the subjective experience of really looking hard at this thing. You're like, I'm staring at it. And so if you kind of go up to nature and you stare at nature, nature is just kind of stare back. And
Mhm.
but you have the subjective experience of like, oh, I'm really taking this in. But there are some tricks. Yeah, exactly. um, here's a trick, a
Hmm.
very, very powerful trick to make you just instantly a better observer.
What's
And
that?
it's called the production effect. And
Hmm.
the way that it works is that as I'm looking at this, if I notice something about it, all I have to do is say that out loud.
So is it that you notice it and then you say it out loud, or is it you say it and then your brain goes, oh, I'll have to remember that?
Well, just the work of saying it out loud
Uh-huh.
is just a little bit more work. It makes you take this discrete observation and you're going to say you're going to consciously sort of put some brackets about it. That little effort is enough to kind of take that and store it for a little while in your short-term memory. Then you say the next thing, and then you say the next thing. And what you'll find happens is you don't say the same thing over and over and over again
Ah, so I
because
may still be going like this, but I'm finding different things over here and
you're
over there,
finding
and
different
oh, there's
things
something
on
up
that
there.
phenomenon, and it
Yeah.
gets your brain bouncing around. And also, um, it turns out that we spend a huge amount of our time mind wandering. So
Hmm.
once your brain kind of basically figures I've got it, then your brain starts thinking about something else.
Hmm.
And but you're not aware that you're mind wandering until you're done mind wandering. And while you're mind wandering, you're not aware that you're mind wandering. And
Okay.
then you kind of like, oh, I was sorry, I was thinking about something else, right? And
Or
so
you
with
don't admit
this,
it and you go, oh yeah, you're right. That looks like
uh-huh,
that. Yeah. Hmm.
uh-huh. But if I am saying these things out loud,
Hmm.
the minute my mind starts wandering, all of a sudden I stop saying observations out loud because I
Then you
can't
know your
make,
mind wandered.
and they go like, oh, like my all of a sudden, like I'm saying no more observations. Ah, mind wandering, and then I can just kind of go back to the phenomenon and say the next thing. Basically, it's if you see something, say something, and this
Okay.
kind of goes against a little bit of the way we think we ought to be birding, because there's sort of this code of silence
Ah,
often among bird watchers that if I'm making any noise, now certainly if the little chickadee's right here in front of me and I'm making noise, it'll scare away. But that bird over there, it knows you're over there,
you're the
and
wind,
and if you're saying in a voice like this, you've got this, that, and the other feature, and I notice this, and I notice this, I notice this, you're not acting like a predator at
Hmm.
all.
Hmm.
And the bird's
You're
like,
acting like an herbivore and
yeah,
muttering to
yeah,
yourself.
you're
Yeah.
cool. You're
Yeah.
cool. You can hang. I know
Yeah.
exactly where you are, and this is fine. And the
Hmm.
bird's not threatened by it. So,
So, do you have
what?
to say it out loud, or can you
Yes,
just
yes.
in your mind say it?
The in your mind. That's the weird thing about it. The in your mind say it. You'll get into that little rumination loop.
Ah,
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn off my microphone,
all
and
right.
I'm going to put this phenomenon in front of you again, and
Okay.
all of you at home. And what you're going to do is just as we're looking at this, we're going to say what we see out loud. And you'll get to hear Lois do the same thing.
Okay.
Um, and so if you notice something that she doesn't say yours, if you're like, ooh, that's a good observation that you just made, then you can riff off of that. And you're like, and, right? And so you can kind of poach some of Lois's observations. That's fine. But what you
If
want to do is just kind of go, yeah.
if I say it, it's oh, and it's got those three little things on the side. At home, shouldn't they also say, oh, it's got those three little things on the side? Because otherwise, you've heard it, but you haven't said it. Does that hearing it count?
Um, Hearing it will be helpful. But yeah, like if Lois makes a really cool observation, then
Repeat
it's
it.
really cool to kind of like, oh yeah, that's right, yeah, it's got those things, right? And so the more, and it's actually here the research on the production effect. If you want to take it even further, they looked at how can you say things that makes them stick better. And if you say things kind of in a monotone, then they don't really register as much with you.
Oh, wow. Did you see the color of that bird?
Yeah, exactly. So if you put some
I'm gonna be great at
emphasis
this,
into your
man.
voice,
I
you know,
mean,
like and you sort of it's like ooh, and it's got these little scratches down here, and there's like this part so appears to have like flaked off, but underneath that is this sort of weird lines that look like a mushroom. You know, whatever it is, like kind of get into it,
mhm.
and your brain will register that better. The more you kind of act into it, then your brain will go like, oh, like so this is absolutely one of these kind of fake it till you make it things. Like show your brain, I'm excited about this. Now, that dramatically improves your memory on these things. The best thing I found, and now I'll leave it up to you if you want to try this, is if you sing it.
You don't want to hear me sing.
Oh, oh yes, we do. all, all your
We'll
listeners
start.
are like, oh yeah,
We'll
oh yeah,
start.
oh
Okay.
yeah.
And
Um,
and you'll turn your microphone back on when you think I've done enough observation because
yes,
I don't want
that's
to
right.
be
I'll
here
come back
for
in and
two
join
hours.
you for a while, and um, and but the and so this is what we're doing is we're going to just compare. Before, when I was holding this up and I said look really hard at this, I think telling somebody to look really hard at something is just totally useless directions. And what's going to happen is, like, notice how many kind of crisp, articulate details are in your brain about it right now. You kind of got this general sense of it, and maybe a couple little details. You're going to be amazed after you have actually verbally articulated these things, how many specific details of this little phenomenon are stuck in your head. It,
Is
this,
there a
the,
reason we're using that thing instead of like a picture of a bird?
I wanted to have a real tangible phenomenon in front of you.
Okay.
And we can do
So
absolutely the
I
same thing
can't
with,
hold it. You'll have to do the holding and the
I'll,
turning.
I'll, I'll hold it.
So
If you
you'll
tell
have
me
to
to
take
turn it, I'll turn it.
direction. All right. Let's
All
see
right.
if Jack can
And
take direction.
um, but I just want to say and also there. But remember, you mentioned that you're tempted just to identify it.
Yes.
So there, we'll kind of come back to that. But very often that can actually impair your observation, and we'll find out why after this.
After this break. And we're going to take a break while Jack goes and sets up his new thing. And there he is. He's quick on the draw, you know.
Okay, here we are.
That's a pun. Okay, so his microphone is off, and I am looking at this object. Now, it looks like it has a hole in the middle. I can tell that because I can see a shadow in there. Um, so the I'm going to say if you could turn it there, stop right there. All right, so I'm going to call the part on the top, and the part on the bottom. So the top is jagged, and if you just hold it there for just a minute, and I'll see, I'm going to turn off my video so I can see his bigger. All right, let's try that. Now, what I can't touch it, so I can't exactly tell what things are, but it looks like it is solid. It looks like if I tapped it, you could, yeah, that looks like, all right. It is white, a creamy white, almost a pure white, actually. Stop moving around, John. Just leave it there for a minute. Okay. It looks like on the, he's laughing at me. I can tell he's shaking. There are three small replicas of whatever that big thing is, because they have the same sort of form where there's a hole in the middle and it comes bigger from the base and smaller to the top, but it never gets really small. And the hole is about, the top is about half the width of the bottom. It looks like it is either broken or it is created oddly because it doesn't have a smooth, continuous segment around the side. There are, I would guess that there's like a skin on the outside and then some holy spots. Can you show me the in okay, that's good. Stop. There is between the outside and the inside, there are gaps, and you can see that it goes down and into not at the big spot, but the outside. There's all these little tiny, yeah, all those little holes. It looks like they go down, like they're channels down in there. And
Okay, so
the
now at this point, we're going to stop.
okay,
Now, I'm going to put this aside, and what I want you to do is just kind of go back into your head now, into your memory,
Okay.
and notice how many crystal clear, specific observations are accessible to you right now about this little phenomenon.
Okay. Do you want me to say them?
Sure, yeah. So
Okay,
tell me about.
so it is a volcano type shape where the cone of the top has an opening in it, like a cup or something, and the width of the top is about half the size of the width of the bottom. And I didn't say it, but I did notice that it was slightly shorter than it was wide. Not by much, but I didn't really get that far. It is white. Um, it is an outer and an inner layer in the white, and between them, in the place that have flaked off at the top, I can see there are channels going down into the structure. Don't know what it is yet. Um, and there were three little ones, like little babies growing off the side. I won't anthropomorphize quite so much, but there were smaller structures that were yeah, they were so cute.
They're so
Um,
sweet.
yeah.
Yeah. So this
That's what
is,
I saw.
and so notice that if you said something, it's still with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And many details that you didn't verbalize, your brain then deletes those. But now there's all this distraction after seeing that and those specific observations. What's going on in your brain right now is really different than what you were told just to look really hard at it.
Hmm.
Your brain harvested this collection of specific nuggets instead of like, wow, that was neat. And it kind of had a hole. Right.
Or, I think that might have been a barnacle.
Right.
And
Right.
as soon as I say it might have been a barnacle, my brain goes back to, okay, let's look in the encyclopedia. And what have we heard about barnacles? Okay, they're on boats or they're on rocks or they're this shape.
Right.
And so I replace my observation with an archive of information, which may or may not be appropriate or accurate for this.
That's true. Um, and the amount that you will then investigate and to look drops down
Hmm.
because what your brain as part of that kind of threat assessment,
Yeah.
can you eat me, can I eat it, that's also another way of looking at that. That's sort of that's part of what's going on in our uh, in our sort of search for the identity of something. Once we've got it labeled, we have the subjective feeling that we know it
Yeah.
or we know something about it. What we may now know is the American Ornithological Union's latest name for that thing, right?
Uh-huh.
If if you're lucky, but they might have changed it tomorrow or yesterday and just not told you. Um, but that name then stands in for the thing.
Right.
And
It's a placeholder
right,
and it's a collection of information that Lois has about that bird. May not be accurate, may not
yeah,
be complete, may be the wrong bird, but the information that is in my head is what I know when you say, swallow.
barnacle.
It's a barn
Yeah,
swallow. Okay,
yeah,
well, I
barn swallow.
know
And
barn
then
swallow. Well, I may know different things about barn swallow than you do.
that's right.
And
And
so,
and so for that reason, labels are really, really useful. You can
mhm,
think of them as sort of a ball with all these hooks on it. And you can take all these observations and little pieces of information and you can attach to them to those little hooks. Because you've got this thing labeled, you now have this nugget that collects and organizes this
mhm,
otherwise kind of amorphous cloud of details. So names are useful. So I write field guides. I like names, but I also see the damage that the names can do to our observation process.
mhm.
Because I don't know how many times I've been out on bird watching trips and people are going, "Oh my gosh, it's absolutely beautiful. Did you see? Like, oh, gorgeous. Oh, that's so cool. Look at that beak. Oh man." And then somebody comes up and goes like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, 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 yeah. Female yellow-headed blackbird." And then everybody goes like, "Oh, cool. That's great. What's that over there?" Right? Like once the name comes in, everybody goes like, "Oh, okay, great." I've got it now.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
when that name drops in that our brains shut off. And so there's many educators and trip leaders. When people say, "What is that? What is that?" What they will do is they will get people to actually observe. What do you notice? What do you see? What
Mhm.
is it doing? All those sort of things before the name.
Yep.
Because that not knowing the name kind of keeps a little bit of the mystery, the little bit of that mystery kind of active for us.
It doesn't
And
replace what you're looking at with what you're trying to dig up in your own personal
right,
archives. Yeah.
right. And there's
We
also
did a show last week. Well, actually, we haven't published it yet, but it'll come out soon. And what we did is one of our crew members, who sometimes is willing to be on the show, his name's TJ, and he is not a birder. He's a fantastic photographer. And by the way, it's his red-winged blackbird picture that is the mascot for the show. It's a nice picture. So what we did is we had Doug Herr, who is a good birder, and we'd put up a picture and TJ would go, I see this and this, and I see this, and I think maybe that's that way. And he would go through and describe the bird as he saw it as a non-birder. And then afterwards, Doug would come on and say, now, this part that you saw, that's very diagnostic of for differentiating this bird from its cousin, you know. And then he would point out the field marks that were useful, and then he would tell us what the bird was. Oh, it was such a good show. We're going to have to do that again. And I like the way you're doing it, where the audience gets to follow along, and that's cool.
yeah, well, the what I like about what you did is you're noticing what that novice birder
Hmm.
observed, and you're
Hmm.
noticing what the experienced birder observed.
Right.
Um, and they can both learn from each other,
Hmm.
right? Because the danger of being an experienced birder is you like, it's an Epidionax flycatcher. Well, I now know, like, here are the four things that I'm going to focus on and target on so I can
Right.
identify this thing.
So you
Oh,
are
thank
looking
you. It
for,
vocalized, right?
yeah, you are looking for what is it, and how to identify what is it, and how is it not like its cousin.
Yeah,
And if and that way you would, as you say, miss seeing something. So maybe
right.
this particular bird has a, I don't know, a black band across its face that no other bird in that species does, but you might not see it.
And the advanced birder um, will often not look at the characteristics
Hmm.
that they know they don't really have to look at in order to
Right.
identify it.
Hmm.
So, for instance, on how many times have you seen that photograph of the red wing at the start of your show?
Oh, hundreds, because we use it everywhere. Yeah.
All right. And how is it gripping the twig or the plant that
It's
it's on?
it's interesting. One of the twigs has been bent down, so it's actually gripping on where the twig is. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to
Oh, no,
add.
no, wait,
Can I
wait, no, no,
add this
don't,
picture?
don't, no, 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 not yet, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Uh,
So it's got
the
one foot up and one foot down. It is head turned to the side. The wings have only a little bit of red and or a color showing. It's very hidden because it's straight out from the front.
and and the but the how is um
You
on
mean, is
the
it
let's
gripping this way or this way?
no so let's take say just the bottom foot.
Okay.
Is it three toes together, three toes separate, two toes together, top two or bottom two?
Oh,
Right? See, these sorts of things.
I would have to really go through my head and see it's three toes in front, I think.
Three toes in front, and then but is it doing this? Is it
I
doing
think so.
this? Is it doing this? Or
I
is it
don't
doing this?
know. It
Right,
wasn't,
but
it's a beautiful
exactly,
picture.
it's a beautiful picture. But
Yeah.
that sort of the point with that is somebody who, for instance, would be a maybe a bird artist or an illustrator,
Hmm.
they might actually be targeting in on what is the foot actually doing
Hmm.
because it's relevant to them.
Right.
Um, so sometimes we see something and we look for things. We kind of know what we need to look for. Like bird feet are hard to draw. A lot of bird illustrators, when the bird is in front of them, they'll go like check the feet, right? And so we check the feet, and because we've made it significant to us. And so sometimes when you are a more experienced birder and you know what to look at on the Impidinax flycatcher, what the toes are doing, that doesn't matter for the
Yeah.
task of identifying it.
Yeah. It's what
And
color they are. Yeah.
yeah, I've got
Yeah.
the colors, the size, the proportions, vocalization, like these sort of things. That you know what you're doing at. So what we want to try to do then also is to expand our our sort of world of what we actually are inviting into the realm of our attention.
May I put up the
Oh, let's
picture that
put
we're
up that
talking
beautiful
about?
bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just make it the big thing. There it is. Now, what is that lower foot doing?
It's got one toe up and two toes down and together.
Okay. And at the
And you can
top,
also
all
see,
three are together at the top foot.
that's right. And on the bottom one, you can also see the back claw curved around,
Mm,
and between the upper one and the middle one, on the other side of the branch, its little claw in the back of
hmm
that. So, somebody who is perhaps a bird artist, they might really target that, like, oh, cool foot position.
hmm
Um, you know, one up, two down, okay, and the other one all together. Um, so
If I did not know what this bird was, um, I wouldn't know the red wing part was important. I'd see this little tiny sliver of orange and white. It looks like oh, I don't know, creamsicle or
Mhm.
something. But it's tiny little bit of color. How would that make any difference? And yet, knowing the species, we know that um, it
It's in its
is
name.
it's in its name. It is something that is important, not only important to us, but important to the bird. And by
Yeah.
that I mean they use that to yeah, yes. They spread
Yeah.
those little epaulets and they get all fluffy and go, I'm so great.
Oh yeah, then
Yeah,
they are, and they are
yeah,
so great.
they are.
So there's some interesting research on this kind of, once you kind of get the name and your kind of brain shuts off.
hmm
There's actually research on this, and it's called the Zergenic effect.
Now, who what?
The Zergenic. So
I
it
love
was
that name,
first
Zerganik.
identified by a woman named Zergenek, who was studying waiters and waitresses in
Oh,
restaurants, who could go up and memorize all the things that all the people, like you want croutons and you want balsamic vinegar, and however you don't
hmm
want a salad, you would like the cheese plate, and
yeah.
all these sorts of things, and no pepper, okay. And a bunch of these folks, they don't write it down.
hmm
And then they go to the back and they tell the chef exactly what to do. The
hmm
chef cooks this. They come back 10, 15 minutes later, put the right thing in front of the right people.
hmm
I mean, this is impressive memory.
Yeah.
And so you could go up to any one of those people and you could say, right, table number 7, what did they order? What small talk are they making? Do you have any kind of, inside jokes yet with them that, might get you a better tip?
hmm
And they'll tell you all about that table.
Now,
And
is that something that they keep or is that just temporary?
it's until they get the check. And once they've got the check, it's select all, delete. So if you've ever studied for a test, you know the
hmm
power of the Zergenic effect. You took that test and then you forgot everything.
Yeah.
Um, Once
Yeah.
your brain gets and what it is when your brain gets the feeling of task completion, it diverts resources that were being used for that task to other tasks.
So
And
are you saying the fact that I put iBird Pro on my phone and I look things up means that I'm not remembering whether a red-winged blackbird has yellow or red or yellow or white under the red?
No,
Did I turn off my brain by adding that mechanical device?
um, no. The actually one of the things that I encourage people to do is to, if you want your brain to do more interesting things,
Mhm.
if you try to do it all inside your electric meat, it's not going to end up well for you.
You're going to run
Because
out of room.
you're going to run out of room. So this can handle about 7 different things at a time, plus or minus 2. And once you get beyond that, it starts bouncing out all sorts of stuff.
Mhm.
And um, so the way around that is to do what's called externalizing your thinking. So you need
So you make
a,
a data dump someplace else and then you don't have to keep it in your head?
that's right.
I do that
So
every day when I write down notes of things I have to do, and then I don't have to keep reminding myself. Reminding myself that you've got to do that.
exactly.
Boy, it
Because
takes a
if you
lot
didn't
of
make
work.
those lists, you'd have to say like, I can't forget the soup, I can't forget the soup, I can't forget
That's
the
right.
soup, I can't forget the soup. Oh, look, a squirrel. What was I thinking about? Right? And then you forget the soup. And
You got
or if you do remember the soup, that whole time where you're going, I can't forget the soup, I can't forget the soup,
I
I can't forget the
can't
soup.
get anything else to come into my brain. I
Your
can't
brain is
notice
full.
anything. It's full. Well, it's not necessarily full, but it's busy.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
so they find this with if you just get people to try to remember a short sequence of numbers, they fail on all sorts of other cognitive tasks. They even fail on social emotional stuff.
Mhm.
Like if you have somebody, like there's this one wonderful experiment where they had people, take some silly test,
Mhm.
and then they got a score for it, and they were to take this number that was ended up being like a long sequence of numbers, remember that, and just go down the hall, and at the end of the hall in door 742, just give that score to the person behind the desk in room 742. So now the person has to remember 742. They've got this string of numbers. They're walking down the hallway, and they pass somebody who is really having trouble. They've got like some books, and they're like trying to get this door open. They walk right past that person.
Well, yeah.
And but if they had encountered that person without this little task in their head, they'd be like, "Oh, here, let me get that for you."
Mhm.
And
And if I had taken that test, I would have whipped out my little pen and my notebook and wrote the numbers down. Did you see room 742? And then I would have been walking down the hall going,
yeah,
oh, here, let me help you.
yeah, everybody who's watching this has a list in your kitchen of things to get the next time you're at the grocery store.
Hmm.
Why do we all have it? It's because it works.
Yeah.
And so it works for the grocery list. It also works for your nature study.
Hmm.
And so what you want to do is get yourself a notebook.
Yeah.
Get yourself a notebook. And if you see something, say something, but say it on the paper. And
Hmm.
you get a whole bunch of observations from out there to on the paper. Aw. Yeah. And and then what happens is you then free up neural resources for the next observation to come in and the
Right.
next observation. And you will get so much more out of every little observation.
Okay. Sounds good. So when I was looking at the white thing, if I had not only said it, but I had written it down, then I could have room for looking closer.
That's right.
Okay.
Um, and by writing it down, there's lots of ways of doing that. So there's the way that comes to most people, because we're all familiar with lists, is to use words.
Hmm.
And words are great. Words are very, very specific. Um,
But it takes a
but
lot of processing for my brain to go through the thesaurus to go, what other words do I have besides white that would describe this? I mean, it's not quite
yeah,
cream. Oh,
and when you say it's
quasi, or
bumpy on the top,
yeah, is that jagged or
like
is that
next week, when I've looked down,
serrated?
it's bumpy on the top. I'm thinking like, could we be a little bit more specific? So that gives you another language, is making a sketch or a diagram.
Hmm.
And these don't have to be pretty.
Do
As a
you
matter of fact, they're
find?
more useful if you're not thinking about making a pretty picture.
Uh-huh.
You are thinking about how, and I'm gonna make, some, useful doodles, useful
Okay.
marks that will help me visually remember whatever this is. Like, just like if I have a little oval and just how far down the black on the belly goes,
Right.
I've recorded a ton of information there with that little, not very pretty doodle.
So if I'm doing it now, so I'm an editor and I'm used to using words a lot. So
Mhm.
if I do my thesaurus trying to find the best word out of all this stuff, is there a similar thing on your doodling or drawing? Do you like you draw it and then you go, no, that doesn't look quite right, and then you try it again, and then you end up with just a shmoosh?
Well, I mean, if it's a useful shmush, this is great.
Hmm.
Because see what you're doing when you're doing that is you first make these first marks, and then you go like that part over there is not right, so I kind of change it,
Mhm.
and then that part over there is not right, so I kind of change that. And as a work of art, probably nobody would hang it on their wall.
Mhm.
But I have, because I put those marks down, I had kind of committed myself to like, I think I'm seeing this. And then I look back up and kind of go like, oh, the real thing is a little bit different in this way. And so I'm going to make that little change. And the real thing is a little bit different in here. I actually changed my description in the presence of evidence. I noticed that what I got down was not accurate and I modified it. That is great. And so thinking of it as, you know, that if it's a smush and it's a useful smush, game on with the smush.
Okay.
But people will actually get wrapped around the axle about having to like, I need to make a portrait of this bird instead of a useful smush.
Okay, so looking back at your object again, that little white thing. Um, excuse me. Yes, there we are. Something's going on down there. Oh well, forget it. Forget about it. So when I do that and I draw the little jagged edge on top, then I'm comparing what I'm looking at to what I've drawn. And I just,
Yes. Yep. And then you get into art and
yeah,
you're derailed.
yeah.
Now,
I
if you
think I
were
would
making
probably do
written
that. Yeah.
notes and you start thinking about how do I spell that? I
Hmm.
can't write that word down because I don't know how to spell it. Like what is like now maybe I have to, hey Siri, how do
Well, I'd be going
spell
in here back to my
striated?
thesaurus. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my phone just said, I didn't get that. Can you go again? Um,
You can turn on a
oh,
lot of
no,
things
no,
with
no,
your voice.
now it's no, 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 I don't want you to call anybody. Oh no, it's calling. Don't know who it just called,
Hold on.
but um, but
You
the
just called
I just called
me.
you.
Oh, that's amazing.
Uh,
At least you didn't trigger my Siri to start doing
that
something. I've
that's
done
right.
that. I've said that in the house, and something else answers. It's like I'm talking to my phone, and the iPad answers, or maybe Jim's phone over there answers. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So like with if you were using words
Hmm.
and you were getting hung up on grammar, syntax, and spelling,
Hmm.
for the purposes of that note taking, the grammar, the syntax, and the spelling are not necessary.
Right.
For the purposes of this note taking, the useful shmush is all we really need.
Jack,
And
how about we do something here? How about if um, we see your drawing material, we see a bird picture, I'll leave my voice on, I'll say, and for me, I record things a lot. So I would like have my phone going and recording what I'm saying. So I don't care about spelling and syntax and that stuff. I'm just getting phrases basically. But how about if we try that? What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. And actually, let's modify it this way. Let's um, a bird pops up in front of me.
Hmm.
I'm going to do the production effect on that bird, and I will describe that bird.
Okay.
And then we're going to make the bird go away.
Okay.
And so the bird will go away, and then I will then turn to a notepad and show you how I would describe that on the notepad.
Ooh, this is exciting. Okay, so I'm
And
not
and
going to
and,
do
and
anything except observe
so
what you're
at the
doing.
first, I'm just going to do. I'm going to verbalize what I see with the bird.
Okay, so first I'm going to put up a
Actually,
bird. No?
yeah. And all right, so passerine proportions, medium length primary projection, um, uh, sort of narrow angle with the foot, pink tarsus, gray feathers right at the base of that black head, brown coming up on the very back of the head with some dark streaks, prominent ear patch around the nape. We're kind of swinging back and then down halfway down the breast to about the height of where the wing comes in. Breast feathers over the top edge of the wing, sort of brown along the side of the body, white along the middle of the belly, gray brown in the middle of the tail, white on the outside edge of that. There's actually a brown stripe above that. One tail feather misplaced, kind of out and shorter. I can see a little bit of the far side of the body, brown on the back. On the tertials, I have a warm brown edge. The side closest to the back is dark brown. Greater coverts, all brown, except the first one that I see is half dark brown, and the rest are red brown. All right, so, and now make that bird go away. Bye, birdie. Right. And what I'll do is, so I was so there's so a couple of caveats here. Number one, I have drawn a lot of birds. Right. So I have a template in my head for kind of, I can say like sort of general passerine proportions, and it means something to me.
Yeah,
Um,
all that jargon you were saying doesn't mean a
I,
heck of a lot to most people.
yeah, so I was talking bird parts to it.
Yep.
Where its tertials were and stuff like that. Actually, learning those things is useful because then you can sort of like, there's this little part on the back, part way through the wing that, and then, so because I said a bunch of those things out loud, um, a lot of that sticks in my head. And so now I'm going to use words and pictures
Go,
to
draw.
I will, but and but if you're saying like, oh my gosh, I like that the way that picture came out, but I can't do that. Just sort of just be aware that I've had more practice
Yeah.
doing this, and this is a skill that you do develop with practice.
Hmm.
And by putting in a bunch of pencil miles, it really makes a huge difference. But at the end, I'll also kind of show you kind of like kind of a quick like generic bird template
Okay.
that you can use if you really want to kind of get started. So I am going to change my view to this screen.
And we'll make you big so that everybody can see what you're doing.
Excellent.
Lots of
So,
shadows on that, huh?
oh yeah, well, if I can turn this off, but then it's worse.
Mm,
Right. Um, so I,
that's okay.
um,
It's cool.
yep.
I think the shadows are beautiful.
Ah, they
I would
appreciate
I
that.
will probably take an excerpt from this where your shadows are.
Um,
So is that
so
a regular pen?
this is a light purple pencil, um, and I use that to kind of lightly block in a general shape of something at the start of my drawing.
So
So
you're
I'm
drawing
remembering.
that shape from memory or from previous experience, right? Because
This is this
you
is
didn't
this is
say
from.
shapes.
Yep. So I'm doing this sort of. I have sort of a general template of sort of sparrow-shaped birds in my head. So I'm using that
Hmm.
and some details that I got from looking at that individual bird. For instance, it had fairly long primary projection tertials, and here it had
What's a primary projection and what are
oh
tertials?
the primaries stick out beyond where the secondary feathers come
Primaries
in.
are feathers on a
The
wing,
the
right?
the, the tip of the wing.
Tip of the wing. Okay, good.
Um, and then there was white down here. There's a little weird feather sticking out in here, and there was a gray spot in here. Had that little pink leg coming in here, and the foot was mostly obscured in the ground. So what I'll do is I will start with a just sort of a light, loose drawing that blocks in the general shape
Hmm.
of what I'm doing. And so this is I've sort of have a basic template, um, and then I will modify that based on any details that I said from the bird.
So
Once
you're
I've
going to
got,
repeat what you said?
um, so I I'm wishing that I made some comments about the proportions of the beak, because I'm wondering, is it more of a short beak like this, or is it like this? I am not remembering accurately, so I'm just going to kind of do my best with I'm going to put a little question mark there. The next time I get to see the bird, I might really kind of focus in on that. Um, I have on
It
this
didn't
little
say
bird.
anything about colors of the eyes or the beak.
That's right. Um, and some things that I didn't say will stick in my head, and um, but definitely all the ones that I did say will. So I will often, if I have sort of a general idea of what the bird is like, I'll be emphasizing the things that are more of a surprise to me, like out here in this part of the wing, this feather here, and I had a set of covert feathers on the wing that were coming across here, and this one was dark on this side and then red brown on this side. And then I had these feathers that were coming in here, and they were dark on the outside edge and lighter red brown on the side that was closer to me. And then there's a little wedge of the wingtip, the primary feathers that stuck out behind that wing. There were on the head here, there's a few interesting little black strikes. And what I was surprised to see, like on birds like this is a junco. Uh-oh, I named it. um,
Well, you were
um,
thinking that anyhow.
yeah. There were some brown feathers up here.
Yeah, those little brown streaks, that was interesting.
And, in if I were to make up a junco, I wouldn't be putting brown up there. That was a
Hmm.
surprise to me.
Hmm.
And so anything that sort of feels odd to me, I want to say those things especially. Um, because I want to get them on my piece of paper. So I mentioned those little brown spots. Um, now
Did you
here,
think they were spots or stripes? Streaks?
I don't remember. I don't think I verbalized that.
Hmm.
Um, and there was a little bit of white. Then there's sort of a broad red-brown stripe along the side. Um, and then on the tail, um, I know from past Juncos that there's this white outer tail feather. But what I thought was interesting in this is that there was sort of light gray here. So light gray. And then there was a light brown streak. Huh.
Hmm.
And that, oh, and there's that little feather that was kind of cattywampus in there.
So,
Um,
so the white belly, you've put in a broad area of white belly. Did you actually see that, or is that from memory? Because I thought that it was bigger at the front and it just sort of trailed off around where the legs were.
I don't remember. I remember seeing that there was white down there on the belly.
Hmm.
It was narrower than I would have made it if I made it up.
Right.
And this was pink. And so a labeled drawing ends up being useful, a really useful tool.
Tell me when you want us to put the bird up beside that to look at.
Um, I'm going to just get a little bit more out of my memory.
Hmm. You had
Uh,
spoken about colors on the back and on the oracle, was it, were you saying?
Auriculars. There's this sort of ear patch that I
Hmm.
could see a little bit of kind of a wrinkle here in this sort of off gray head.
But it was all the same color.
Yes, it was all the same color.
Hmm.
Um, and so
Hmm. Cool. A water stick. Will you say out loud what you're saying to yourself?
um, let's see. These parts were red brown. There was sort of a medium brown stripe in the tail. Now I'm wondering, was there that much contrast between the belly color and the back? I don't remember. See, it's when you start kind of trying to put something down on paper like this that you'll come up against the limitations of how much your brain remembered. And you have this, I had before I went to do this, I had kind of this subjective experience of like, oh yeah, I've got that bird. But then as I start really transferring it to paper, I realized that there are all these parts that I really didn't observe very carefully. And I wouldn't be aware of what those are unless I um, I kind of put my nickel down on um, by 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 having to put marks on paper.
Hmm.
And so I also want to be aware of where I'm kind of it's kind of arm waving and making stuff up,
You're
or
winging it.
you are dangerous.
You do know, yes. Well, you do know that the pun is the lowest form of humor.
Oh, wow.
And I'm Lois.
There we go. Um, so, is the flank and back color this different? So, um, check bill size, shape. I'm kind of giving myself a to-do list
Hmm.
of of things to do.
And
Um,
and one thing that I think you said, but I wasn't sure, was something in relation to the wing and how far back it went, or something about that.
oh yeah, the primary projection was from the edge of the secondaries here, these feathers here, to the
Hmm.
tip of the primary. It's out here.
Right, but what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking that might go a little further out.
Oh, more further in
Might be a
this
little bit
direction.
longer.
Oh, that feels right. I like that. Um,
We can check that.
and there was also if I am kind of just copying that picture, we could see a little bit of that wing on the other side,
Hmm.
kind of slopping over. Um, and you're thinking, well, that's great if you've had a bunch of experience drawing birds before,
Hmm.
but I, uh, but I actually, let me actually kind of work in sort of a little bit more about any words. So this was red brown. Um, and the back slopes seem to be pretty straight. Yeah, that's what I think I saw. And what's neat about this is that the real bird is going to be different.
Hmm.
And then when I see the real bird again, the things that are different about what I put in my notes
Hmm.
and that are different on the real bird will really stand out to me
Right.
because there'll be this glaring difference um, between the bird and my marks on paper.
Hmm.
And
What
so
what are
it,
you using for a pen or pencil rather that shows through after you paint it?
well, it's a watercolor paint.
Hmm.
And so the graphite, just a regular pencil,
Okay.
shows through.
Okay, good. All right. Can we see the bird? Can we see the bird?
Let's put the bird up alongside this.
Okay, Glenn, give us a bird. All right. And I will put that
Bird.
up right next to it. There we go.
Ah,
Yeah, I
okay.
was I was wondering about that bill because I said in my head I said pink bill and pink legs
Yep.
and
Yep.
and the tail is longer and the back wings are longer.
Mm-hmm. 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 There is a good kind of things that I would I'm noticing I didn't notice accurately is that this rusty patch here kind of ends the rusty patch on the shoulder ends where the um, is sort of down in this area,
Mm-hmm.
and then this area is paler.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm gonna just
Yeah.
put in and
And the thing that where I was looking at the white and thinking that it was narrow towards the back, it's in shadow, and so it doesn't look as white as I thought it would.
hmm hmm this should be longer, and I can show how much longer by just having a line like this.
Mhm.
And so if I get another look at the bird,
Mhm.
um, so this area here is dark with pale edges um, on the primary feathers with pale primary edges.
Mhm.
All right. So, and then this part here should be more red brown.
Yeah. I don't see those really dark marks that you put in that top of that wing. I don't see them at all.
The
The one to
oh
the
yeah
right,
yeah
and they
this
just aren't there.
um so on the back of the wing here
Mhm. I
um
see. You've got it a little bit more forward on the bird than it
yep,
is in the
that's
painting.
right.
That's right.
So I so that is going to require a second little sketch. So if the bird then pops up in front of me again,
Hmm.
um, um, I'm then able to change what I did and I can kind of do now sort of real time with the bird in front of me corrections.
Hmm. I'm noticing that when you're doing this, you are drawing the colors, but not the shadows, which makes absolute sense because you never know if the bird is going to be facing into the sun or away from the sun.
Yeah, for these purposes, my goal is to try to get myself to notice something about the bird,
Hmm.
sort of plumage wise.
And your tail
Um,
isn't long enough on the last one. That's still, yep.
yeah,
That bird's got a long tail.
yeah, but what's neat about that is that you're able to and kind of like, is that long enough? Is that like too long? When you just kind of look at the bird, it's got a tail.
Hmm.
The minute you put something down on paper and I commit to a little decision, then the real bird will be longer or shorter than that.
Hmm.
And dark lores,
Pink bill,
yeah,
pink
really, really
bill.
pink bill.
Yeah. Usually they're sort of a creamy pink, aren't they?
That's sort of the way it sticks in my memory, but I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Now, this bill is open. If you were mentally to close it, I think it would be halfway between the two bills that you show on your sketch. Don't
mm-hmm.
you think so?
Yep. So maybe what I'll do is,
Yeah. So when you're drawing that, you're not going to try and draw it open even though the bird had it open. Is that correct?
um, I can, um,
But would you generally? I mean, this is
let me take you over to some real journal pages.
okay.
This is done from a photograph, right?
Yep. And we have more
And
photographs of juncos if you want to see them.
yeah, but so things I want to point out here is that as I did this drawing,
Hmm.
there are mistakes.
Hmm.
There are mistakes in this little bird.
Hmm.
And the what is what's what's fun about that is that these mistakes I can I can learn from them if I lean into them.
Hmm.
And so I'm not making these marks on paper to make a perfect drawing of a junco.
Hmm.
I'm making these marks on paper to get my brain to kind of to notice like, oh, I see this and I see this and I see this. This
Hmm.
is oh, that's what I thought I saw, but actually I'm seeing this,
Hmm.
right? And then what I'm doing is I have a kind of a mental model in my head of how the bird should be longer. I had a wonderful birding mentor named Rich Stallcup who would say that when the bird and the book disagree, believe the bird.
Oh yeah, that's a
And
great one.
and so this is when the bird and my mental model of how the bird looks disagree.
Believe the bird.
Believe the bird.
Yeah,
Believe the bird. And so
that's
this is a I'm incrementally bringing myself closer to an accurate understanding of junkoness.
hmm.
But I put some marks on paper and thought that I got it. I did the best I could. But then when the real bird pops up again, I can see like, oh no, change that. Oh no, change that. And you notice I'm not beating myself up about it. Like, oh, I got that wrong. I can't believe I messed up the bill. Right? No,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. I'm just trying to remember this thing. That back wants to be more red. So I'm giving double underlines to those things that I want to um, that really need some changing.
Well, I think you did amazingly well considering that you were not looking at the bird when you drew the sketch. You were talking yourself through what you had said Um, that's amazing that it's even remarkably similar.
And I should also say I have been practicing. I've drawn juncos before,
Hmm.
um, and I and what I and I've drawn a lot of other birds before. And so when this happens, I've already studied some stuff on bird wings, but then you notice I put my bird wings in and I put my bird wing too far forward,
Hmm.
right? So I'm still making mistakes, and that's totally okay. Those mistakes are every mistake is an opportunity to learn something, because the mistake is pointing a little arrow towards there's part of this bird that is different than the way I thought it would be.
And
And
part of
that's
that
really useful.
Part of that can be whether or not the bird is extended its neck a little bit, which you can never tell because there's feathers all over the place.
Hmm.
And so it may be that at times the shoulder is closer to the beak, and at times it's further away.
So I'm going to pop in one of my real sketchbooks.
Okay.
This is one from a trip to Mexico, and I intentionally went without a field guide. So I couldn't put in any of the names of the birds.
Okay. We
Later on,
can't
some of my
see it
friends
quite
said,
yet.
some of my friends, told me like, oh, this is this and
Ah.
that's that. Um, and the I just sort of want to point out some interesting things that happen. So here's this crazy long-tailed bird,
Hmm.
just ridiculous, large, long-tailed bird. I
Hmm.
thought, wow, that's really cool. And here are some descriptions of its vocalizations. It pops up. I make my best sketches of it.
Hmm.
Now, I'm doing that knowing that, oh, and my daughter brought glitter glue, so there's glitter glue. Um, Knowing that there are things about this that are wrong, and that's okay. And the next time I see that bird, where is that bird again? Oh, here it is. Look at this. So here's the same bird, but now I'm noticing that there's this alternate face pattern. Look at this little white stripe.
Are you sure it's the same bird? Maybe it's a cousin.
It could be. It could be, but that I definitely hadn't seen that before. So now I've got that in my notes.
And that
So
tail's a lot longer than it was in the
that
first bird.
it sure is. And look at this. So when I see the bird land, and it's got dark and light in its tail. And my first quick sketch, I put the dark on the outside of the tail.
Hmm.
So it had sort of a fanned part at the top, and then dark. And then I saw it move again, and I realized that no, 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 no. The light part is on the outside,
Hmm.
and the dark part is on the inside. So then I have notes here. It is not this pattern. It's this
Well,
pattern.
but that's your sketch, and you just happen to have an outsider. We can't tell where on the paper we're supposed to look.
Oh, I have the word yes written to this one
Yes.
and pointing to the one that's right. And next to this one, this is not the pattern of white on the outside, right?
And so you in addition to your pencil, you must have white paint.
Yes. So this is a white colored pencil on gray paper.
Okay.
Um,
Can you show
and
us that bird compared to the first time you drew it?
well, first let me just modify it a little bit, because then I get another look at the
Uh-huh.
bird,
That looks like the second bird.
a lot closer to that second bird. And then finally there was one other sketch that I got of it before I left that didn't get colored in. But you notice just sort of the changes in, I'll put my fingers on the pages where those birds reside. So at first, my brain is trying to grok what's there. I'm getting a few little pieces of it.
Hmm. And it has two of those head feathers.
Mm-hmm.
And the next
Then,
bird had one head feather, but it had a white whisker, would you call that?
yeah,
I don't think they're the
and
same bird.
th- and then
Yeah.
um, I have this one with single, and then the next look at it, that that double stripe up there. So
Double with a whisker.
double with a whisker. And so as I am kind of moving around through the forest, I'm getting these different views, getting different clues, and putting those in. And if I thought of this book as being filled with portraits of birds, then
Mhm.
when there's an inaccuracy, I would be mortified. But it's not. It's my notes. It's this is what I think I saw. And oh, this is kind of fun. You're saying I'm not putting in the shadows. Sometimes all I see is the shadows, and so when that happens,
Silhouettes. Yeah.
yep, you can get
Yeah.
all those.
Yeah.
But sometimes I get a quick little glimpse of the bird. Sometimes it's more cooperative and hangs out with me. The
When
more cooperative the bird, the further along I get on some sketch.
were you able, while you were there, to show those sketches to an expert birder in the area who could say, yes, they're all the same species, or actually it's this one and this one is the cousin, and then this one is a third species? I mean, were you able
Yes.
to know that they were all the same species?
So, so the names that are in here, I had a friend who was a really experienced birder down there, and
Mhm.
towards the end of the trip, sat down with him, and he said, "Oh, this is this bird, this is this bird," and I was able to
Mhm.
put in the the
The
names
names, the
for a
labels.
bunch
Yeah.
of those. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I led with the observations,
Right, but my
and
question is, were those four different drawings, were they, did your friend say these were all the same species?
yes,
What species?
let's see if I wrote it down. That's why I write things down. Otherwise, my brain forgets them.
There's one
And
on
that
the
one
left.
isn't labeled.
Uh-huh.
What about you? Nope.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, there's something.
No, that's just a description of its sound.
Oh, I thought
um,
it was okay. So it's not.
it's not. Yeah. The I was sort of for me the names are kind of an afterthought.
Oh, of
Um,
course. I was just trying to figure out because there are so many birds that look so similar.
that's
And
right.
I want to know if this is the white-throated sparrow and not this other species that it looks so similar to, because otherwise, did I get it wrong? Is there variation, or are they really cousins? They're cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I used to do a long time ago is I wanted to have all my sketches be identified, and I wanted to have them be right. I thought that somehow I was supposed to be right.
Mhm.
And so what I would do is I'd go out in the field and I'd sketch. And then I'd come back home, look it up in the book. And then
And then
I
you'd
would
believe the
I'd
book,
fix
wouldn't
it.
you, silly man?
Yeah.
Right?
And then I would fix it in my
Yeah.
journal so that it was right and make it
Or that
look
it
like
was to the book. That doesn't make it right.
exactly. So big air quotes around that right. Because there was an interesting experience that I had that um, forever changed the way I used this notebook. So, and this was, I was, um, I was a student at UC Berkeley,
Mhm.
and I'm walking across the college campus, and I look up in the tree above me on my way to class, and there's this bird with this bright yellow throat. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And I sketch it. And I was late to class because there was a bird.
I got
But
distracted. It's not my fault.
yeah, it's like, you got to understand, it was really pretty and yellow on its throat. So then
I've never seen one like that before. What
yeah,
class did you get late for?
I
I
don't
hope it was
remember.
something something
I don't
natural.
remember the class, but I remember the bird. And
Yeah.
and then I got home and I looked through my books and like there was this bird with this bright yellow throat and I opened up the page and like it says, all right, here's the yellow throat. And so I looked like, boy, did I get this wrong.
And
And
yellowthroat wouldn't be in a tree on the Berkeley campus.
yes,
That's
exactly,
not where they
exactly
live.
right. That's right.
You
And
didn't
so
read the description. You just
I,
looked at the picture.
but what I did is I then changed my drawings
Hmm.
to match the way it should be. And I was just beating myself like, boy, did I get this one wrong. And then the next day, I'm walking to the same part of campus and I'm walking along and I look up and
There's the
there's
bird.
the same bird, same tree. And I realize I had it right before. This is not a common yellow throat.
Oh, it's an uncommon rarity.
No, it was a common Audubon's warbler
Oh,
with
okay.
yellow throat and those 5 spots of yellow all over its body
Hmm.
and all these wonderful patterns. And that's what I had originally drawn. But then when I saw like, oh, the yellow throat, my brain said, well, this is must be what it's like.
It's got a yellow throat.
And
Yeah.
and so from that point on, I just realized like let your field notes be your field notes,
Yeah.
and this record with all the imperfections and mosquitoes are biting and you got a backlit view of that thing. Just go with that
Yeah.
and do your best. Experience this thing as you're seeing it in the field, and let those field notes be your field notes. And you don't have to. You're not making a field guide.
Well, I'm not making a field guide. You're making a field guide.
Yeah, and if I'm doing illustrations for a field guide, then I've got all my sketches around me. I've got photographs. I've got study skins. You've got all
Hmm.
these things piled up, and you can, make your Audubon's warbler look like an Audubon's warbler instead of a yellowthroat. But for your field notes, for
Yeah.
observing in the field, don't put the pressure on yourself of having to get it right. Just try to notice something and get it down. And if it's not, again, big air quotes, right, that's okay. But getting something on your paper is better than nothing.
And would you say that now we have the luxury of having a picture that doesn't get up and fly away? But would you say that when you're out observing, you should do this? Okay, it's got a yellow throat, it's got a black bill,
Yes.
it looks like about the bigger than a hummingbird, smaller than a sparrow. Okay, yeah, oh, I see a little white on the tip of the tail when it flittered away. It's gone.
Yes.
Now, would you be better off um, trying to draw it while it's there, or just say what you see and then draw it after it flits away?
Yes. So you're absolutely right. If I start looking at it and then look down at my paper, where did it go? I've missed that precious little window to observe the bird.
Yeah,
So when the bird pops up, be on the bird, talk to the bird. If you see something, say something.
good. Well,
And
I'm going to have to go out and practice this.
yeah, and then um, the bird will either fly away or you're
Mhm.
going to realize this bird is one of those really cooperative ones.
Mhm.
And then I can start to sketch it and I can look back at the bird and then I can change my sketches and I can look back at the bird. Some birds, people think that you can't draw birds because they're just going to fly away. But it's precisely because they can fly away that they're
Mhm.
willing to stick around, because they look at you, this kind of landlocked, lumbering primate, and they go like, "You, my friend, are not a threat."
Yep.
I'm cool.
Yep.
But if they were terrestrial, I would be a threat, and so that's why
Mhm.
the mammals all hide from me.
Yep. Okay. So, what else do you want to talk to us about observing or improving our birding by observing? I mean, I think this is great information, and I'm having a lot of fun.
Well,
What
me
else do you
too.
want to talk to us about?
Well, there's another powerful tool you
Huh?
can use to get yourself to observe more.
Okay.
Because there's a dangerous thing that happens as we're observing. At a certain point, our brains will kind of say, "Okay, I'm done. I've got
Hmm.
it." right? And seen. And sort of being done is a concept that makes absolute sense in the context of I was just before this workshop, I made a big pot of black beans.
Hmm.
You cook it too long, it's
Yeah.
there's a point where they're done and they got that
Uh-huh.
nice little firmness. A little bit longer, then they kind of get mushier, they dry out and you burn it and it's a mess, right? So baking a cake done makes sense.
Hmm.
Observing nature,
There isn't any done. How can there
there's
be
no
a
done.
done?
There's
Nature goes on forever.
That's right. It's infinitely complex and wonderful.
Hmm.
And but your brain is going to, being the practical electric meat that it is going to say, and scene, right? And now
Hmm.
it is time for you to go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so we have to kind of trick our brain to get our brain to go like, actually, let's linger.
How about we do this and go, okay. Yeah, I went to something else. Now I'm back. Would that work?
I
Would
haven't
that
tried
trick
it,
your
but I
brain?
will.
Yeah.
I can try that. And I don't know. That would be interesting to see. But what I do is I intentionally harness curiosity.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. How do you harness curiosity?
So we think of curiosity as a state that will come to you on its own, right? That there's a phenomenon in front of you and you get curious about something. But you can actually go do curiosity. You say, like, I think I'd like to be curious right now. And what you start doing is, as you're looking at that Junko, um, you start asking it questions. And what you do is you just take some phenomenon that you've observed and find the question behind that. And you say those out loud. You say, like, you've got little brown spots on top of your head. Do all Junkos have that? And I've never noticed it. Is that a male female thing? Is that a young
Ah,
thing? Are you in the middle of some molt? What's going on with your little brown spots? So I've noticed those brown spots. Instead of going like, oh, you've got brown spots, is to actually daisy chain onto that observation
mhm.
questions.
Okay. Can
And
can we put up a different Junko and do that, or do you want to?
oh, sure, sure.
Okay,
Why don't we
I'm
do
going to
that?
make us a threesome here.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
All right.
Oh, hey there, little Junko. Oh, look at how big and sharp your beak is. So your beak is much larger than I thought it was.
But it's in the light and it's reflecting and it's so my
Yeah.
yeah.
So is my mental model for wrong? A particularly um, is this a particularly long-billed Junco? Is um, so I'm noticing something about it that just kind of makes me go like, huh, that's interesting. Either I need to update my Junco thinking,
Hmm.
um, or there's variation in Junco bills. Either way, that's really, really interesting. And oh,
I,
look at
I
the
wonder if
brown
the
stripe.
I wonder if the feathers are just have worn away at the back edge
On which back edge?
of the bill.
Oh,
So the feathers,
so
I mean, it's not a lore's, but
yeah.
feathers could be worn away a little.
And so that would make the bill appear longer
Uh-huh.
because we're seeing more bill exposed at the
Right.
base. And the best way to tell this would be to look at some different Juncos.
Well, let's look at another Junko.
But you see what this just did is this made us, yeah, look at your big old bill. So this is, oh, you've got weird dark marks top bottom. Wonder what's
Uh-huh.
up with that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So so this bird and that last one, their bills are proportionally larger than the generic junco that is sitting perched in my brain. And so
Uh-huh.
what this is an opportunity for me to update my thinking about juncos.
Do we have
And it,
another? Can we look at another?
um, oh
Oh,
yeah.
oh, now look at that. That is not that long.
Let's go
I
back to that
wonder
previous
if
one.
there are different varieties of Juncos.
Oh, you got a big, like, is there some kind of Darwin Finch thing going on with Junco bills?
Let's
Is
go
there a
back
lot of
one.
variation? Is the variation in Junco bills regional or within a population?
Should be telling Joseph Moreland that we've got a splitter and a lumper. And maybe
The
it's a different bird. Yeah, I
the
don't
the,
know.
the gross beak Juncos. But you see how what this came from was making an observation,
Hmm.
and then we
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 wondered.
we wonder about it, and then
Yeah.
it's got us. Let's see that next Junko again. And then
Hmm.
when this bird shows up, our brains snap to that part of the picture,
That's right. That's right.
and our brains and we're kind of and we're geeking out about something.
Well, that's because we're talking about bills. Now, if I were to talk about feet, those feet are intriguing feet. I mean, it
Mhm.
looks like they have pink feet, and then the middle digit has something hanging off of it, like it's, I don't know, muddy brown or something. Is that normal? Let's look at a previous Junko.
Let's check out another Junko.
Oh, see, now that one has just pink feet, and I don't see anything. And go backwards, and let's see that one.
Yeah. So, or could that be its claw from a different
Okay,
angle?
forward, forward, forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Oh. So the
Hmm.
other claws we're seeing those as being white. Is it these ones I'm seeing as being dark?
Hmm.
And is that a just a phenomenon of the light, or
And then we
is there?
compare the beak and the feet and see if it's got a big beak, it has certain kind of feet.
Ooh. All right.
Ooh.
So do you see where this goes is you if you can get yourself kind of tapped into some little mystery
Yeah.
when you are out birding,
Hmm.
interesting things will happen.
They
Because
will.
that little observation then will pull you on this little journey of investigation. And then you're not just going like, oh good, it's another Junko. eBird, I got another Junko. Oh,
Yeah.
it's another Junko. Look,
Mhm.
there's 10 of them.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You're instead kind of like you're on this beak thing, and all of a sudden the beak of the Junko for that hike is every time you're seeing a Junko, like okay, let's get this one, let's get this one. Okay, can you see its beak? What? And like oh, huh,
And then you have to write a book, The Beak of the Junco.
the beak of the Junko. That's right. Um,
Oh
and
boy, this has been amazing. Amazing. Yeah.
but the amount of stuff that is known. So the first of all, the amount of stuff that we individually know is very,
Is
very small. The amount of stuff that is known about birds,
is a little bit bigger.
a little bit bigger. The amount of stuff that is possible to be known and no one has ever asked the question
Is this big?
is your hands have to go off the screen,
Well, I have to
right?
keep them on the screen so that people can, yeah, you're right.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So and that's where we want to play. You want to
Hmm.
get your little science brain out there, and we call it deep geeking out, right?
Bird
So
geeking. Yep.
yeah, so you're not just coming up with a list of birds that you saw.
Mhm.
You are looking, you're making observations. You see a junco, and yes, you've seen juncos before, but here I've seen a lot of juncos before, but I now have a new, fresh question about juncos that I've never wondered about before,
Mhm.
and it deserves some deep geeking out. And
Curiouser and curiouser,
curiouser
as they
and
say.
curiouser.
Yeah.
That's Alice. As you know, Alice was so excited that she had forgotten how to speak English properly, right? So yes, so let me just sort of show you some curiouser and curiouser
Sure.
from a journal,
I like
and
that.
sort of like how does like sometimes you get in on a question and you can figure things out.
Mhm.
Sometimes you get in on a question and you can come up with possibilities, and it all depends on the type of question that you're asking.
Mhm.
So if I jump back to this can,
Okay.
um, so
That beautiful bird.
this is just a question about like how do you really look,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But sometimes what I am doing, let's see.
I love
Where,
that
aha,
journal.
here we go. This is fun. This was fun. This was a neat little mystery. So, you've heard of variable buntings. This was
Nope.
a painted bunting. But this, I decided, is the variable painted bunting because um,
You talking hybrid here or you talking joke?
It was my joke. It was my bad
Okay.
joke. So it was a painted bunting. Um, and so when I first saw this in
Can
the
you move it
light,
over a little more so we can
oh
see it? There
yes,
we
there we go.
go. Perfect. Thank you.
And we'll kind of zoom. We'll focus
It's
this,
okay.
refocus. All right. So here's me. The sun is behind me. The light is falling directly on the bird.
Hmm.
And you've got red, green, blue, RGB, all these bright colors.
Hmm.
Now, when the bird moves around so that it is
90 degrees away from sun.
90 degrees, the red appeared still to be really bright to me,
Hmm.
and the blue and the green were not as intense.
Is this a bird that has iridescent feathers or is it just color?
So the greens and blues are structural color. This didn't have iridescence,
Okay.
but I was wondering like what is up with that?
Hmm.
Blues and greens are structural colors.
Hmm.
Um, is this what is so is the red not changing color? Because it is not a structural color. And then I had to go around the bird and kind of get at such an angle so that I was looking into the sunlight. So the
Hmm.
bird actually came over here, and I had to kind of get around so that the sunlight was behind it, and I was looking at the bird backlit.
Hmm.
And yeah, these colors really dropped out, and I could still see that red. And because then I was thinking of this structural versus pigment colors.
Hmm.
And then that made me think about, are birds that have structural colors, do they have to be more deliberate about lining themselves up with the object of their display when they're trying? Like if I were a male painted bunting and I were trying to attract a female with the sun in this angle, I don't think things would go for me very well. I would
But
want to kind
but
of swing
your
around
your
so that
eye, your eye is different than a bird's eye.
this is true.
So
But would
maybe
I
your
want
eye
to?
sees more red and maybe they would see, the green and blue. We don't. Do we know?
We know that they can see into the ultraviolet spectrum.
Mhm.
So they can see light that we can't.
Mhm.
But if I am having structural color, is it more likely to display relative to the sun than a bird, say, um, with all pigment colors?
Maybe you need to describe for people what the difference between a pigment color and a structural
Oh,
color is.
that's a good point. So the next time you are out hiking and you find a blue jay feather on the ground, pick up that feather and hold it down below you so that the light from the sun is coming down on it and reflecting back to your eye, and you'll see a beautiful blue feather. If you then take that same feather and hold it up to the light so that the light is filtering through it, you don't see the light filtering through a blue feather. You see a gray feather.
Hmm.
The color changes because of your angle relative to it. Now, if you had done that with a red feather, or if you had done that with a yellow feather or a brown feather, it would still, when the light comes through it, look yellow or red or brown or orange. Um, but the blues and the greens, these are structural colors. So the little tiny barbules, the little hooks on the feathers that hold them together will bounce light back to us. And there's other sort of properties that allow feathers to bounce light back to us at these odd ways. And if you took that blue feather and you ground it into a powder, you would get a gray powder.
Hmm.
The color actually comes from the structure of it. And so it is then dependent on the angle that you are observing that feather from.
And the most obvious one of these is if you have ever seen an Anna's hummingbird or a ruby-throated hummingbird, any of those, the gorgets are totally reflective depending upon whether they're facing you or facing away from you. And that's even more different, isn't it, than these?
Yep, so that's even more extreme. Those you get off at the wrong angle and it
Mhm.
just turns black.
Yep.
And you're like, wow, somebody just turned off your little your little bird beak there, your bird throat color there, and then at the right angle, all of a sudden, it's this jewel reflecting back to you.
Hmm.
So this is just another example of how finding a little mystery
Hmm.
then gets you not just going like, oh, I saw this bunting, but all of a sudden you're crashing through the forest trying to get at an angle so that you can actually see the bunting backlit. And that just opens up adventures and mysteries. If you can get yourself authentically curious with some phenomenon around you, you're going to have a great time out
Hmm.
there. And again, the number of possible things that we could wonder about,
Infinite.
it's infinite,
Yeah,
and most of what could be known, it is not somewhere waiting for you to do a Google search on it.
that's right.
No one has even asked the question.
So, viewers, you're hearing this? Curiouser and curiouser? And go out and ask questions.
That's right.
Oh,
So,
thank you
so,
so
but you
much,
want to
Jack.
make that just an intentional part of your birding practice.
Hmm.
So, if I could kind of prompt you to do three things, one would be to verbalize your observations. If you see something, say something.
See it and say it. Got it.
And that you're then using this known psychological effect, the production effect, to get your brain to hold more material. And you could hold it long enough then to download that to a piece of paper. Keep a notebook with you. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about pretty pictures. Look for ways to use words and pictures and diagrams and maps and numbers to describe what you see.
Okay.
And then your ability to remember and to observe will go way up. You're not having to hold it all in your electric meat.
After you
And
see it and say it, then you write it down.
that's right. That's right. So those two go very well together. And the final little piece is let's get curious. Let's intentionally be curious. When you get curious about something, your brain, that feeling, kind of lean in feeling, that is your brain getting a slosh of dopamine. Your
We're on
brain,
drugs.
that's right, your
On
brain
drugs.
produces dopamine in the presence
Curiouser and
of
curiouser.
curiosity. And that neurotransmitter makes it sort of more fun to stick around and geek out with things. So you're out there in the middle of the forest, you say to yourself, I think I could use some dopamine right now, right? Just start asking questions.
Hmm.
And again, fake it till you make it. You
And you
just start
ask your
asking
questions
questions.
aloud. You
Yes,
you
yes,
use
because
it that same see it and say it. It's think it and say it.
yes. And then also write those questions down in your journal.
Hmm. And you don't
And
ever have to have an answer. And
that's
it's okay.
absolutely right. That's right. You should ideally be coming up with many, many, many more questions than you will ever be able to answer in your lifetime.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some of them you'll be prompted to either walk around the bunting and investigate yourself or look up. Others will remain a mystery,
Hmm.
and that's all good.
I want to tell people that you have lots of these workshops, explanations, demonstrations, whatever you want to call them, on your website. And it is definitely worth going there and checking out Jack's stuff. Oh, I said Jack.
No, no, no. Everybody
John
calls me Jack.
Muir's Law. I
No,
know.
no, 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 no. On my driver's license and my passport, it says John Muir Laws.
Yes.
Everybody calls me Jack.
I know, but your
Um,
website is not Jack, so they have to remember
I know, but
johnmuirlaws.com.
like the only person who called me John was my fourth grade principal when I was in trouble.
Ooh,
And so, like, oh my, like, also, I know when I get my phone rings and I pick up, like, hello, and they say, hello, is John
is
there?
John there?
And you're
No,
like,
we've never heard of John. Yeah,
ah,
yeah,
I know
Alexander is, yeah. Mhm.
you're a telemarketer, aren't you? Like, no, I'm not a telemarketer. No, no,
I,
no, no,
I'm
no,
I'm an
that wouldn't be.
insurance agent. No, you're not that
Yeah,
either.
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not.
So let us ask Glenn to put up the thank you slides, and I'm going to do a little bit of business before we go away. So here we
And also,
go.
I just want to thank you for inviting me on. I really enjoyed hanging out with you, and
Oh, this is wonderful. We should do this again. Yeah.
would love to.
Anytime you want to do it, we can do it. All
Thank you
right.
so
So
much.
I am going to put up this slide and say thanks to Cornell Lab of Ornithology Macaulay Library for letting our show use their pictures. We didn't this time, but we usually do. And DVE Store for, well, we didn't use the webinar this time either, did we? Or the office hours back end. But for the show, we frequently use those. And then I want to thank you, the viewers. So thanks for watching. We appreciate that a great deal. And I'm going to put us back up here because I'm in control right now. There we go. And thank you to the crew. Now, this is not a standard production, so our crew today is Lois Richter, John Muir Laws, Jack, and Glenn. And thank you all for doing that. So we're going to say goodbye for now, and hope you come back later. And you can see all of our Birding with Lois shows here on birdingwithlois.global. That's our website. Check it out. Yeah. All right, Jack. It was good to see you. Any last words before we head on out?
Stay curious, my friends.
Stay
Thank you so
curious.
much for being
You
here.
heard it
It's just
from the man. Okay. Bye bye.
take care.